What's going on, everybody, and welcome into what will be the first episode in my Chalk Talk series. Today we're going to be kicking off a subset of this by beginning to go through the amazing resource called the Pass Coverage Glossary by Cameron Saran. I will absolutely be leaving a link to the book in the description. You can buy it for 10 to 15 bucks off Amazon as an ebook. It goes extremely in depth to all of the common core coverages that college football and NFL teams run today, with diagrams and descriptions, alternative names depending on which coaches use them. It's a fantastic resource, and I'm going to be taking everything that it talks about in here and at least trying to apply it to our virtual video games. It's going to be a bit long of a first episode because we need to get a lot of terminology out of the way and basic descriptions of how coverages work. Just to give us a common language to begin with, but I hope you'll stick with me. The next couple episodes will be a bit faster once we hit the ground running. So if you're looking forward to this and you want to see more, definitely go ahead and stick around, and we will be also starting some Dynasty content using these installs in-game. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy. We're going to begin, because this is the first episode of talking about coverages, by getting some base terminology out of the way. The first thing we're going to cover is what is called a triangle coverage. A triangle coverage can be defined as a split safety 3/2 coverage. Now let's break that down a little bit more. Let's start with split safety. In simplest terms, draw a line right down the offense. You have one safety on either side of the offensive formation. And by 3/2, we mean that we have 3 defenders over the offense's 2 receivers that they can have on either side of the formation. The goal of every triangle coverage is this: to have one more defensive back than the offense does receiver, because this means that someone is always going to have extra help. It won't necessarily be a double team, but it will be help in knowing that you have a safety available to help you, or your apex is going to be able to help you. Now, I just mentioned an apex, and that is not a position that, if we play the game, is referred to. So what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about how offenses and defenses refer to positions. So you've likely heard the offensive receivers referred to as 1, 2, 1, 2, based off where they're aligned. The outermost wide receiver is number 1, and the second outermost receiver is number 2. The running back in this case is the third eligible receiver, so he is number 3. This is how we're going to refer to all of our wide receivers, or all the receivers and tight ends and running backs that are eligible in the play, because it's simpler than saying this is a tight end, this is a slot, this is a wide receiver, or a running back. Just referring to them as 1, 2, 3 is simpler in this case. We do a similar counting game with the defensive backfield. The outermost defensive back, this guy, is a corner, which is pretty self-explanatory if you've played the game and know the basics of football. So we have 2 corners. We have, in this situation, 2 safeties. The second outermost defensive back is the apex. The second most outside defensive back is the apex. The third outermost defensive player that is not a defensive lineman is your hook. In every defense, we will always have 2 corners and 2 apex defenders. We will not always have 2 safeties and 1 hook. That number can fluctuate depending on what structured defense we're running. But in triangle coverages, we will always have 2 safeties and 1 hook defender. So now we're going to get into the actual responsibilities in MEG. And there's a reason that we're talking about MEG first instead of quarters. Even though quarters is in CFB 26, MEG is typically installed first because it's a little bit simpler of a coverage. Now, I don't want to get into all the rules associated with quarters, but there are less assignments for the corners and the apex defenders to know about and recognize in MEG than there are in quarters. So when a defense is actually installing coverage, they're often going to begin installing MEG, run that until they're comfortable running it, and then add more rules on top of it by installing quarters. So to begin with our rules, in MEG, the corners are going to be man-to-man on number 1. And the name for this, you're going to love this, is MEG. MEG is an acronym which stands for Man Everywhere He Goes, and it directly refers to the assignments of the corners in this coverage. So no matter what route the wide receiver runs, whether it is inside, outside, short, deep, over the middle, outside, it doesn't matter. The corner has him man-to-man. So what we've done is we've essentially taken this guy out of the play in our theoretical coverage debate. Number 1 doesn't matter anymore because hypothetically he is always covered. Now he can still win on routes, but in the theory of do we have enough guys to cover all of their guys, we're doing great because number 1, not a problem whatsoever. Now our attention focuses on number 2. The apex defender is going to be man-to-man on number 2, so long as he does not go vertical. Now, by vertical, it's a tricky definition. Most coaches have a rule of it being somewhere between 8 to 12 yards classifies as vertical, and it heavily depends on down and distance and other game situations, talent level. Do you have the athleticism to run with this guy for a little bit more? Are they throwing it short to the back more? There's a lot of nitpicky stuff there about how we actually are going to declare if the receiver is vertical. But in simplest terms, 8 to 12 yards. If the receiver's route is deeper than that, the apex is going to do what is called a reroute, which you can think of as a light press. He's not trying to jam him at the line and not let him go like an outside corner might on a quick slant to the end zone, but he's just trying to slow the receiver's release as much as possible and let the receiver be forced to declare if he's going vertical or not by the movement of his hips, his eyes, his body movement, and language. So we're just trying to get a good wall/jam on number 2 to force him to declare his route. So we're man-to-man on number 2 unless he goes vertical. If he does go vertical, so say he just runs down the field on a vertical route, after he reroutes 2, he is going to get to the flat, which is this area out here. And he is going to take whatever comes his way, loosely. Now, in the game, I will say this isn't coded great. They more so kind of just run to this spot and then stand there. But for all intents and purposes, you can think of it as they're zoning out. They're technically doing their responsibility very stubbornly. But if 2 does not go vertical, the apex defender goes to the flat. Same thing here. We're rerouting. If 2 is not vertical, we're going to the flat. Or if 2 is vertical, we're going to the flat. Excuse me. If 2 is not vertical, we take him man-to-man. The hook defender, for all intents and purposes, will always be man-to-man on the back to start out the play, because the back is number 3 in this situation. The hook is always going to be man-to-man on number 3 out of doubles. The only situation where this changes is if the back is what is called fast to the flat, which means right as the ball is snapped, he's going. Oftentimes running backs are faster than linebackers. So to negate this weakness, the linebacker or the hook defender will make what is called a push call. So the back is out fast to the flat. The hook is going to yell push, push, push to the apex defender, and they're basically going to switch responsibilities. The apex will get right to the flat and take the number 3 going fast to the flat, and the hook is going to have to get out here and wall off number 2. So you can think of it as they're just simply switching responsibilities, because if he's going out, if number 3 is going out, they're not going to run too fast out also, because that's just going to mess with the route spacing. They could run him deep out, which is a weakness we can talk about later. But for all intents and purposes, if he's fast out, there's a better chance that the hook can get to him rather than getting to number 3 out the backfield. Now, the safeties have probably the hardest job in almost all split safety coverages, because they don't have a true responsibility at the start of the play. The corners are man-to-man on number 1. The apexes are man-to-man on number 2, with an exception, and the hook is man-to-man on number 3, with an exception. But the safeties are going to have to do post-snap reading. What they're going to do is they're first going to key number 2. And they're going to read what number 2's route is. So remember how we said that if 2 goes vertical, the apex is not taking him? It's because he is going to run himself right into the safety. And the safety will take him vertical. So, say if there's a corner, safety will take him. If there is a post, the safety will take him. If it's a deep dig, the safety will take him. If 2 is not vertical, and therefore he is the apex defender's responsibility, the safety's eyes are going to switch to number 1. So for example, say if we get something like this, the safety is going to read 2, see that 2 is not vertical, and then get his eyes to 1. 1 is going vertical. I'm going to go help on number 1. This is really, really good if we're thinking, that there's a post and then maybe just a dig like that, a shallow in that's not vertical, because now we can give help to that deep route. So now that we have covered the base responsibilities of MEG, we're going to now see it in action. And a great way to test any coverage, and this is done when drawing up coverages in installs, is showing what it looks like against 4 verticals. Why? Because 4 verticals is the simplest offensive play that there is. It's 4 receivers running in a straight line down the field for all intents and purposes. And if you have a coverage whose rules cannot work against that, you do not have an effective coverage. So all coverages are quote-unquote tested against 4 verticals. So we're just going to go ahead and play this out and see how MEG plays. Looks good. Everyone is covered. You see we get our reroutes by the apex defenders as the safeties are making their reads. Now, I don't love that in the game they turn their hips to the inside. That kind of defeats the purpose of it, because you're more likely than not going to going straight backwards or breaking outside to go cover number 1. So I don't love that they're doing that. But we get our reroutes. We got our safeties making our reads. And you see, once the route from number 2 has been declared as vertical, we're zoning out. We are zoning out. If I were actually coaching these defenders, I would say go find work. But they're just doing their job very stubbornly. And the safeties are now taking over the vertical route from number 2. You can see the hook defender is kind of in the middle of nowhere. This is because the back is on a late release because he's staying in to protect first. So this is something that teams actually do to fool backs or linebackers and hook defenders in pass coverage, is they slow release him out the backfield, making it look like that they're staying in to protect, because if he stays in to protect the back, we can go back here a little bit. If he stays in to protect and he's just in here, well, there's no reason for him to be man-to-man on a guy who's not going out. So instead, the same thing that the apex defenders do, he's going to zone out into this kind of intermediate dig area. And if you want a great example of what this is supposed to look like, again, in the game, they're a bit wonky with doing this. Go watch this last year's Super Bowl 59, and look at Zach Bond's interception on Patrick Mahomes. That was textbook hook defense out of a quarter shell. That's what it should look like. You recognize the back's not going out. You drop back into that intermediate dig area. You get a fantastic interception. In game, again, a little bit stubborn here, but you see, because the back release is late, see, he's not coming out of the backfield until the receivers are already 10, 20 yards down the field. It messes with the linebacker a little bit. So that is a bit of a problem that we have. But overall, our coverage looks really good. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and just quickly jump through a couple of different routes that you can expect to see and how this coverage plays it out. So all that we've done here is we've taken number 1 on the left side. He's off the screen right now. And put him on a slant, just to emphasize and show the fact that the corner is going to run with him. When we run quarters, this will look different, and it will not play out like this. But for all intents and purposes, because we're running MEG, I just wanted to show that the corner will run with that inside route. And more importantly, the apex will ignore his typical quarters responsibility and do exactly what he's supposed to do. Reroute and then get to the flat. Example of here now is putting number 2 on an inside breaking route. In game, this gets a little bit wonky. So you typically would expect with him breaking inside and shallow that he would be his all along. But the game is really, really hard set on its numbering system. And because it's coded, I can kind of understand why. In real life, this guy's declared. He's going shallow inside. He's yours. We're not playing switcheroo here with the hook and the apex. He's declared his route. Once he's declared his route, whoever's on him is on him the rest of the play. What the game does, however, is it gets very stubborn, because technically, with number 2 running shallow across the field and number 3 running a sit route here that ends over the middle of the field, according to the coding, he becomes number 2 and he becomes number 3. And you're going to see this play out, because you're going to see at the snap, the hook defender takes him man-to-man, and this apex is zoning himself out right here, again, because the back has not declared his route, and he doesn't really get a chance to react before the play ends. So that's a stubborn area where the game's not perfect, but again, we're working here with imperfections, and in this case, being a bit too perfect with our coding and being a bit too stubborn. But in real life, we wouldn't coach it like this. Here is going to be an example of number 2 running a shallow outbreaking route. So again, what we're going to expect as he runs out, the apex is going to take him man-to-man. So let's key in on this. And that's exactly what we get. Now, this is a little bit of a mismatch because this guy is in the position grouping, a linebacker, and this is a wide receiver. So we didn't match personnel well enough for the purpose of this exercise, but the coverage is doing what it's supposed to do. Now we're going to give an example here of what the push call looks like in game. So I had to go ahead and switch plays, but what we're going to go ahead and really focus on is the back is immediately releasing to the flat. The hook is going to begin to go with him. See, he is fast to the flat. Realize I'm a linebacker. That's a running back. I can't get to him. Yell, push, push, push to the apex, who will then drive on number 3. And the hook will then collect number 2 in this case because he is running this in-breaking route. So let's go ahead, take a look. And that's exactly what we get. Now we're going to go ahead and actually run this against a real type of play and concept, and actually not just 4 verticals or 4 slants. And we're going to kind of play the game of what is everyone's job and how well does this play out in the game. First up, we know that our corners are going to be man-to-man on these guys no matter what. I don't care what route they're running. They're running comebacks, that's great. We're man-to-man, we're not worried about number 1 in this situation. Apex, we're going to reroute. Number 2, breaking in. And this is tricky. This is right in that spot of, is he vertical, is he not? So this is a great situation where we're going to get to see how the game codes it. Because this is right in a situation where, as a coach, I wouldn't be mad either way with either decision. This is a situation where if we get beat this way and I ask my apex, why didn't you go with him, or why did you go with him? As long as he gives me an answer of, I thought he was vertical, or I didn't think he was vertical, I wouldn't be too angry about it. So we're going to see how this plays out in the game. This number 2 on the left, this is a bit more defined. This is absolutely vertical. So we are rerouting, and then we're going to get to the flat. So we absolutely should see this play out on the left side very cleanly. The safety is going to collect the post and run with it. And then again, with this safety, we're going to kind of have to see, are we declaring this as vertical or are we not? If it is vertical, he will drive to help on the dig. If not, he will move out to help on the comeback route, which is kind of a situation where he's not really going to do anything this play because it's going to be really hard for him to get out there to an outbreaking route. But we're going to go ahead and see how it plays out. And for all intents and purposes, the back has been blocked, so we should see the hook defender settle very nicely into that dig area to rob the dig that is coming. So, I paused. You already saw. We declared this as not vertical. Now, again, we went ahead and passed it off here between the apex and the hook, but we 100% declared this as not vertical, or not vertical enough, because the safety is out here chasing this comeback route. Everything else is playing out exactly how we expected. We're man-to-man here. The safety has collected the post. We're man-to-man here with the safety coming in to help. We're robbing the dig. and our apex here is zoning out into nothing, doing his job very stubbornly. We've seen how the coverage plays out ideally, and even when we have our rules being followed exactly the way we want them to, no coverage is perfect. There are still susceptibilities. The first one lies with our safeties. They have a tough job because they have to read 2 to 1 and then react very quickly depending on who is going vertical. And what we have here primarily is a leverage problem because the safety has to be backpedaling to respect the vertical threat of number 2. So a great way to beat MEG is a smash concept. Why? Well, corner's man-to-man on the hitch route, and the safety is going to be backpedaling, thinking this is vertical, and then when the number 2 breaks out, he's going to have to flip his hips, turn and run, and with quarterback and receiver on the same timing page, this is an easy pitch and catch. So we're going to go ahead and play through this now. And you see right here, we're in a situation where we can lead this corner flat down the line. So right now he is running to that front pylon. What we can do as a quarterback is lead him out here. So he has to round this out and almost break back to the ball. And that's an easy pitch and catch. That's how corner routes are coached. That's how I was coached to run a corner route, is you always run to the pylon and you let the quarterback throw you open. In this situation, that's exactly what we do. The apex is not going to make this play. The safety is too deep. It's an easy throw, and it is a weakness of MEG. So one thing that I did try and play with here was new to CFB 26, the safety width feature. So I went ahead and I set the safeties to spread, which puts them now outside of number 2, because I wanted to see, okay, if we're running MEG and we're getting killed by the outside corner routes by number 2, what if we align the safeties further outside? I was hoping that this would be put in correctly so that we kept our width and were able to play the corner route better. However, that's not exactly how this played out. So at the snap, you see the safety just erases all of his leverage that he had at the beginning of the play. So he is right here splitting the distance between the hash and the numbers. And then at the start of the, and then once the ball is actually snapped, he basically works his way back to the hash. He started out here and he ends here. So unfortunately, when I saw this, I didn't get as excited about the safety depth feature as I once initially thought that I would be, because this is just the same problem that we just had. In fact, it might be even worse because he was the safety was shuffling inside while the route is breaking outside. He's even more open than he was before. But we are persistent, so I went ahead. There is a wider feature for the safety width, which puts them out even wider than the spread feature. And this puts them out at the top of the numbers, which is ridiculously wide. As soon as I saw this, I thought, there's no way I'm going to ever run this, because this is just giving away, what is probably like 25, 30 yards of free real estate to run a post with number 2. And this is my first time seeing how the safety width feature worked, and it's like, we're stacked over the corner. In this situation, I'm not going to run it like this. I mean, maybe if the corner was pressed up and I was running a corner blitz, we could do something like that. But as soon as I saw this, I'm like, okay, no, this is pretty corny. And as far as alignment is concerned, we would never do this against a doubles look. However, it actually does play the corner route better. So it's not aligned correctly, but it does appear that if maybe you set the safeties wider than spread, but tighter than wider, so right in between the two settings that we have, you can actually get it to play this corner route better. But this just goes to show that there is a weakness to MEG, and it primarily is that. As far as other weaknesses are concerned for the coverage, obviously you're putting a lot of pressure on your outside corners because they have to cover every route. So therefore, a lot of the weaknesses that just straight man-to-man coverage faces, MEG can face if your outside corners are not good man corners. Quick hitting, short routes, slants, speed outs, hitches, all can be viable here because in game we are playing from such an off alignment that like 7 to 9 yards off the ball. And I tried, you cannot press your corners in quarters. You would have to show blitz and then they get way too far up the field. So really your only solution would be to show cover 2 pretty much every play, which you could absolutely do. And if I'm going to run MEG, I probably will do that to get my corners tighter to the receivers because I want them to be able to play more competitive man-to-man against these quick routes. The other weakness, obviously, is any deep outbreaker by number 2. That's the primary weakness. If your safeties are not good in man coverage and you're not willing to stack them over the corners, then that is a weakness that we just live with. And if the quarterback can make that throw consistently, we say good job, and we call something else to go ahead and cover it. Now, the biggest strength of MEG is what I talked about at the very beginning of this video, that number 1 is eliminated from the quote-unquote concern of the coverage because we know there is someone who is going to be on him the entire play. The next strength, and this isn't really portrayed in the game, but applying to real football, there's less for the apex and the hook defenders to think about. When we get into quarters, we'll dive more into all of their responsibilities and how it's much more now than what is shown in MEG. But there's less thinking involved. And again, this is why MEG is often installed first before quarters, because the less thinking you have to do, the more freely and faster that you can play. And that's better for everyone. Also, this is something that's kind of referred to in the pass coverage glossary. Some corners have said that it is easier to just play man-to-man on number 1 instead of like in quarters where you actually might have to switch defenders. Same thing. The more you have to think, the more you have to react, the slower you're going to play. And this is taking a lot of it out. But that's just a kind of general yin and yang of football. The less thinking and more just footballing that you have to do, typically the better athlete you have to be. Whereas if you're not as good of an athlete, you have to have a lot more mental rules to keep yourself in a good position to win when you're not as good of an athlete. But that's going to do it. It was a lot of information. We had to go through terminology the first time, explaining split safety coverages and getting the basics of quarters down. when we move forward to our next coverages, it will be a little bit faster because we don't have to go over all of the basics now. So I hope that you learned something here, both that can be applied to in College Football 26, Madden 26, and all the games moving forward, as well as real football. That is my passion, after all, is coaching football and learning about the game. I just happen to also like playing the video games. And I think this is a great visual avenue to teach people. So if you enjoyed, please go ahead and consider tagging along for the next videos that are coming out, and also watching Dynasty content I'm going to be putting out, where I'm going to be using all these things that I install in these Chalk Talk series in my Dynasty games, and building a team to play to the strengths of these coverages and concepts that I put in. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later.